Uh, you, you might say, well, that's what our tapes are for, but tapes aren't a 100% reliable technology. Disks are even less reliable than tapes because they can be jarred. If you drop a hard drive from, about an inch and it hits the surface wrong, even if it's a pillow or a cushion, just jarring that hard drive enough will render it useless. So that's where offsite backups can come into play. They're a very good second solution. Never want to rely on offsite backups alone, though, because they do take a long time to restore from. So long, usually, that they'll send you your data on some kind of media, DVD, hard drives, and it usually takes a day or two to get that stuff. You can even do offsite backups yourself. Different things out there that let you copy them off. The way to go nowadays is a hybrid system. The hybrid system that we're working with, and we see lots of agencies adopting very, very quickly, is the SMART BDR. The SMART BDR stands for Backup and Disaster Recovery. So it's a combination of solutions. It's a very, very fast disk-based backup. It's also a third-party off-site backup. So you've got all the backups on site, on disk, and they're usually sized to store about a year and a half's worth of backups. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on the agency's data growth. The offsite backup can be retrieved, very, very quickly in the case of a short restore, or if you have some kind of a disaster, you get a new BDR with your data 24 hours later. That would be next day. The added benefit of the BDR, though, is it's a backup server. It's not a backup drive or a backup tape system. So being a backup server, it backs the stuff up a little different. It actually takes pictures of the hard drives instead of just copying the files off. By taking pictures of the hard drives, there's several benefits. One, you don't have to be out anymore when your backups run. Most agencies have to tell people you need to be out between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. because we've got our backups running. You don't have to do that anymore. The Smart BDR actually backs up all your data every 15 minutes, and it does it while everybody's in and running. It doesn't slow the system down at all. Because it's backing up the whole images of the hard drives, though, it does help in another matter that if your server does fail, the BDR has a backup image of the whole hard drive, and since it is a server, it can, using virtualization technology, actually become your server, and it can become multiple servers at one time. So you can see why this would be a very, very key part of your data retention and archiving practices. Moving on to training. The policy reflected in all aspects of training, education, and procedure and compensation. It needs to be. Everyone needs to understand their responsibilities, also the liabilities and the consequences, though, of these. Along the lines of, again, the management buy-in is everybody else has to understand. Everybody else has to, have that responsibility and understand what can happen and how serious these things are. Most of the time we see issues with where data retention policies are broken and people are deleting files that they shouldn't. It's usually in their mind, oh, it's no big deal. It's okay. It's not really important information. So that's why everybody needs to understand not only their responsibility, but the liability and the consequences. So as a wrap-up, we used lots of different sources to gather this information, and I'm going to leave these up on the screen for a moment. If you want to learn more about all these different acts and privacy laws out there, lots of these resources have talked about them. You can also look to, the state and federal government websites. They list all these. You can find anything from brief overviews and cliff notes to the bills in their entirety. For some good light reading, Information Nation, 7 Keys to Information Management and Compliance by Randolph Caan. Great, great read. Jesus Mena actually wrote Homeland Security Techniques and Technology. Now you might think, well, what's Homeland Security have to do with it? But they're out there protecting our information and talking about a lot of the key things, techniques and technologies that are used and that you can use. And then computer forensics. That's even taking it a little further about how to get all that information back. For regulatory requirements, a lot of them can be vague and ambiguous. make sure you're developing policy statements that have specific actions and measures. And reducing your volume, you can eliminate the content that's expired and retention limits, like we talked about the mail archiving product. It can delete it on its own. The document management systems can do the same thing. And also eliminate low value and low frequency access data. You want to incorporate retention requirements in your metadata under governance. When implementing your policies, make sure you've got your audit services set up. Whether that be the manual audits that you do, just checking on people, or maybe that's the reading of reports every quarter on the email system, making sure things are being kept, or checking through the document management system, making sure that the documents are being deleted when they're supposed to be deleted. And very importantly, ensure you're incorporating all your data sources: email, paper, fax, you name it, photographs. That would be, copies of maybe driver's licenses you're taking and so on. So I want to thank everybody today for joining us for the webinar. We talked about a lot of topics and went pretty quick through them.